Let's see if that chemistry can cause a reaction that causes destructive tendencies among Nightmare Esports.
So we know that Apex 47 is the motivator for Ofenar. Now I wonder who is that man from the side of Nightmare Esports, because you gotta thank your motivator, you gotta thank Apex 47, but you also gotta thank Beyonce, which he forgot in his quote. So I'm gonna call you out on that, Apex. Of course, when we look back at the draft patterns of the teams in Game 1, again, Yves, highly contested. Nightmare Esports, they got it in Game 1, but in Game 2, they decided that they don't want it.
Yeah, they had to pick Eve anyway because this is a hero that you cannot really afford to get left open. That real-world manipulation is such a powerful tool for controlling team fights, but Ofenar already baited them in that direction by picking the Valentina first. So with it gone from the pool, it's a little less for Nightmare to have to worry about, and they will start by contesting the show straight away.
It was a ban that they kind of pulled through in the first game because it was flexed by Ofenar yesterday. Well, for Ofenar, they didn't really make any changes, still the same bans. Now Khalid, Gatot, they're all on the table. We saw that Valentina Hylos opening in Game 1, but Hylos has been banned by Nightmare.
I think banning out Hylos is a really good shout here. That Glorious Pathway is such a powerful tool to not just engage, but also to split apart fights. We saw it being used to cut off the Tier 2 previously, and that just made movement difficult. But with Hylos gone, you will go ahead and snatch up the Gatot.
It does, again, set Ofenar up for any particular big ultimates that Nightmare Esports will have. So the Aurora comes through, this one is pretty much expected. The Khalid was also an option. We'll see if Nightmare Esports just wants to reveal it, because even when you show the Khalid, it doesn't really tell you too much where the Khalid and Cho will go. Something that Ofenar demonstrated yesterday. Suyo, though, will be their option.
Well, it is true that picking Khalid with Cho doesn't give you direct confirmation of who's going where. It does mean that you already know that these heroes are Roman EXP. So that allows Ofenar to still prepare for it somewhat. Looks like they will go ahead and grab the Suyo in advance here. And let's see if Ofenar want to go for the Alpha counter.
They do take the Harif. Alpha not on that radar for now. It comes down to whether Nightmare wants to ban that hero out. One thing is for sure up to this point, which is Nightmare Esports has not shown that they could put Oppa on that Cho XP, so that Matilda is definitely not a consideration at this point of time. I think Coach Osprey is very aware of that, so they go for the Bruno ban instead. Any heroes that could give Harif a hard time.
Harif is a pretty common lane dominator style hero, not quite as strong in poking compared to something like a Bruno, but that's why you decide to get rid of it, so that Harif can still perform well against other matchups. There are of course heroes that can actually do pretty well against him. Natan can outscale Harif, Iritel can outmobilize Harif, Beatrix is also a safe fallback, so I think that there's still plenty for Nightmare Esports to pick up.
How much homework did Osprey did for this series? Because there's also the Lunox, right? We always look back at Lunox as one of the direct answers to Harif if we get to that point. We'll see if Nightmare has experience with that hero. Nolan gets banned now as the jungler for Ofenar has not been picked yet. Tianzi's option are going to be limited just a little bit. He still has Hayabusa in the pool. The Ling is always there. We had the Julian as well. We've seen a couple of teams pick that up.
I think if they're going to continue banning junglers, then Hayabusa is the most likely option here, because Ling and Alpha are both somewhat manageable when you have a Cho on your side. Hayabusa would be the hardest person to catch, so maybe, let's see if they agree with me.
I would agree with you. I think Hayabusa needs to go.
Yep.
It's not just based off of Tianzi's performance, but at the same time is how annoying the Hayabusa can be, right? We know that Ofenar can accelerate the game very fast, and the performance in Game 1, you don't really need Tianzi to do too much because everyone else has laid out the groundwork. So they banned the Joy instead. The Hayabusa True. We'll see if Tianzi will get it again.
I guess Joy is also kind of annoying to deal with, but I do feel like it's a little easier to catch in comparison. So because of that, Hayabusa gonna get locked in by TNZ once again, and they're gonna keep Alien's pick a mystery until the very end. Let's see if he does go back onto the Terizla.
There is a 1+ point for Nightmare's current draft. You have two heroes that have ways to deal with Hayabusa. Well, Aurora has a passive. Suyo sort of have iframes and damage reduction with the Immortal form as well. So I suppose it's a bit more manageable compared to that Game 1 situation. Now they gotta reveal the last two picks. First of all, is this gonna be a roam show for Jaspin? And what is the marksman gonna be? Is that Lunox a consideration?
I think Lunox
Or
would...
Beatrix, I think.
I actually do think Lunox would be a pretty good idea because the Brilliance also helps you deal with Hayabusa somewhat, right? It's already known to be a counter to Harif in lane, but looks like they'll go for the more reliable Natan and the Edith.
Still think Khalid is good for Ofenar. It is open. They do play that Khalid too. So you did point out that Gatot isn't the best engager alone, right? So you need kind of a secondary setup. I mean, there's still Terizla for Alien if he really wants that.
Yeah, Terizla is open. Like you mentioned, the Khalid is still open. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that Alien could go for at this point. He could also pick up the Gatot and become the secondary initiator if they grab something else for Apex, since the roam hero pool is actually still quite open at this point.
That too. Unless they throw a curveball and go Matilda, but I don't see that happening. At least not in this draft. So the Arlet. Me and LaFell have been talking about the Arlet yesterday. When will we get to see this hero, right? High skill cap, but also one of the biggest playmakers in the current game. And wow, Ofenar will give us the taste. First Arlet appearance on the wildcard stage.
I think this is a very Ofenar type draft. You have the Arlet to start off the fight, then you follow up with the Gatot and high mobility heroes in the Hayabusa and Harif to really play around things. Nightmare Esports gonna have a pretty tough time here, I think, in this game, but they definitely have a solid scaling curve. If they can play well around the Suyo, Cho, and Edith in the early game, then that could set up the snowball they're looking for.
And they definitely have a lot more early damage compared to Game 1, so Nightmare have a chance to actually push us to a Game 3, but Ofenar is going to ride off the way from Game 1. Let's see if that will continue in Game 2.
The land of Dawn shall bear witness to what could potentially be the conclusion of the conflict between these two opponents here at the M6 Wild Card stage. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you guys stay in your seats because this is going to be a match worth watching.
It definitely is going to be. Let the suspense build up just a little bit as we'll get a bit more time to talk about the properties of the draft. Again, Nightmare Esports didn't really have the most damage in that early to mid game in Game 1, especially dealing with a Hylos that has an elegant gem. It's just such a tough cookie to cut through. But in Game 2, you got good control with Aurora, you got good damage early with Suyo as well, and not to mention decent ways to handle that Hayabusa if push comes to shove.
So Ofenar will have to try and find ways to play around these angles, which gives a bit more breathing room to Nightmare Esports. Lest we forget, this is a pivotal game. This is a pivotal match. A victory here is the only way they can keep their chances of going to M6 alive.
Not just that, also continues to put Laos on the map, especially when you look at the local region, at least for the Mekong region. Their biggest rival has always been Legion Esports or ex-Xeno Zenith, right? And it's always been that mountain that they could not summit. And not just that, right now, you got another one to worry about before you even consider moving to the next step. Nightmare, like you mentioned at the start of the series, they always fall short at the finishing line. They always fall short before cutting that ribbon. And if history repeats itself, it is going to be at the end of this game with Nightmare being on the losing side.
It would not be a good feeling, and that's why I hope that Nightmare will put it all on the line here. They've been at the wildcards before. They are not strangers to this stage. They are no strangers to the international scene. This is a lineup with much potential, and if they're able to at least find that stepping stone, they could make things happen.
It's going to come down to Jaspin on his signature pick, the Cho, which gave them the only game win that they have so far in the wildcard, which was against DFYG yesterday at game number 2. Putting all their eggs in the Jaspin basket. This is the hero that made Jaspin such a feared roamer in the Mekong region, and to a certain extent on the international stage against some of the up-and-coming regions. But right now, putting it to the test against Apex 47, who has gotten his hand on the Gatot Kaca, it will be kind of that tug of war, right? It's like mind games, whether you can operate this show to its maximum capacity and find that opening for your team to capitalize on.
It's a hard thing to do when you're on this stage, right? Especially, I think the tournament has been living up to its name as the wild cards. There's just so many things that you have to consider, so many factors that could be unexpected that you have to be prepared for. While some of the teams here haven't quite been able to live up to the opportunity, others have been able to shine and make surprises occur here in Malaysia. So Nightmare Esports, I'm hoping they can replicate that.
And at the same time, we just want to inform everyone watching, there's going to be a bit of a troubleshooting from the side of Openar. We appreciate the patience as we figure out the issue and give everyone the best viewing experience. And not just that, make the players feel comfortable, right? You want them to be in the tip-top condition. That's how we deliver the standards of being greater than ever, especially on the world stage. But it also gives, I guess, Nightmare some time to start thinking about the steps to make when you go into that game one. Again, we highlighted Jasmine so much. Game one felt like he had that glimpse of, I want to make that play, but I wasn't given the room. Now, he gets exactly what he wished for, so hopefully he can pull it off. But we also got a hot topic, and I want to ask you this one. Are we in the era of fighter junglers, or not really?
If the era of fighter junglers refers to Suyo and Alpha specifically, then yes. Otherwise, no, I don't really agree, because it's only these two particular fighter heroes that are actually being played in the meta right now. Otherwise, you still shift quite heavily into assassins, right? We have the Hayabusa, we have the Ling, we have the Nolan. Suyo kind of counts as half assassin as well.
Yeah.
So, you know.
I think the only one I could think of as the third candidate for a fighter, well, not really even a fighter, is the Fredrin, right? It was slightly buff. I know Sujin played it in MPL ID, but I feel like with Alpha around, you just don't feel as good. Maybe Boxdale, like that one was also kind of an old guard, right? Fredrin against Boxdale was a thing, but right now we see the Alpha into Suyo.
In fact, I think I heard somewhere that Baxia right now has the lowest pick rate of all heroes in pubs.
In pubs?
Yeah.
And I thought Cyclops had the lowest pick rate.
No, not anymore. I think Cyclops is actually pretty solid.
Boxer has lower pick rate than more complicated heroes like Arlet.
Yeah.
Like, wow. I'm surprised.
Because even complicated heroes, people will try to play them. We're not talking about win rate, we're talking about pick rate.
That is true. That is true. I could understand in that degree why Boxer isn't a thing, because I, till today, have no idea how to play Boxer.
You just roll around.
That's what they say, right? You roll with it. But winning is another thing. Though I do miss that era. Like, if you ask me, the perfect scenario would be a mixture of having a decent amount of assassin and a decent amount of fighters / tanks in the jungle.
I agree with you. I think...
When was the last time we had that?
I don't think we've ever had that, actually. I think this is the closest we've ever come to that, because it's always been like assassin meta or tank meta.
That's true. There is one in between though, the Martyrs, but that one is like a very isolated case, right? We see that by Vamos and it was picked 2 times and it had like a 50% win rate. Very small sample size.
Like, I think generally whenever fighters are meta in the jungle, it's only like specific fighters, right? It's not really a fighter jungle meta. Except, I guess, when the game first launched, you know? I think that's the only time, because there weren't really a lot of tanks in the first place then.
Yeah. Special mention to some junglers who still pull out fighter in the jungler, because we got Paquito jungle for BTK and Insidio, which they did pull out, Justinian and Mobazane, which is interesting. But for now, we are going to take a bit of time to troubleshoot the issues, so we will take a short